did it take forever? But before we get into that, I would like to make a little quick announcement. I finally have a place to put my books. I've got a book cubby. Granted, that's a bookshelf. I have a book cubby because I don't have enough books yet to fill the bookshelf. I feel like a kindergartner. Let's get into my review of Casual Vacancy because I know you're all just dying to know. This book was alright. It was decent. It isn't in my all-time favorite. Oh, way to go, J.K. Rowling, you did it. It's also not in my what the hell did I just read? What is wrong with you? It's like in the middle ground of, okay, it was decent. I finished it in like great timing too. Because wouldn't you know, what's J.K. Rowling working on if you guys didn't know? Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Oh, how exciting! I actually never read that. In my defense, I really thought it was kind of one of those, nerdy books where it's just J.K. Rowling talking about the beasts and creatures she created in Harry Potter or talked about in Harry Potter. But she's turning it into a screenplay, and apparently it's going to be a movie or something. Finally finished it. It was decent. It isn't like 50 Shades of Grey, I'm happy to announce, so I don't have to go and buy the hardcover of this and beat J.K. Rowling with it. As you guys know, I read to you this little back panel. It has been so long that I'm going to reread it. Let's begin, shall we? In the idyllic small town of Pegford, a councillor dies and leaves a casual vacancy, an empty seat on the parish council. In the election for her successor that follows, it is clear that behind the pretty surface, this is a town at war. Rich at war with the poor, wives at war with their husbands, teachers at war with their pupils. Pegford is not what it first seemed. When I read that, I didn't seem thrilled with it. It kind of seems stupid, in all honesty. Pretty much what you see is what you get. Unfortunately, with this back panel, someone dies, it's an empty seat on the parish council, people are fighting for this seat, and it's just a bunch of people fighting with each other. I'm done now with this review. Goodbye! I'm kidding. I'm going to give you guys a bit more of my intake on this story. The first chapter is the hook. It pulls you in. It really does, because you have Barry Fairbrother, and he's writing this article, and he has a splitting migraine, and his wife's nagging him because it's their anniversary. She's going, I want to go out to dinner. You never take me out for dinner. But she's nagging him. So he finally decides, okay, I'm going to take you out to dinner because it is our anniversary. They get in the car. They drive to the restaurant. They get out of the car, and Barry collapses in a heap of his own vomit and dies. Pretty much he has a brain aneurysm. But that is your first chapter, and that's a really good hook. I mean, although it doesn't really pull you in, you're still kind of sitting there going, okay. However, as the story goes on, from the second chapter to about mid-book, it's really just the townsfolk kind of hearing about his death and reacting to the death and then going off and telling someone else and then having them react. You are introduced to a lot of characters, and at first that kind of put me off because it made me think of City of Dark Magic, where you have all these characters thrown at you. I am at least happy to admit that these characters have their own personalities. You don't forget who they are. I think what really helps is the way J.K. Rowling kind of switches between characters. You get a lot of point of view changing. What I did not like about that, I'm used to character changing point of views of chapter-wise. It's one chapter as a character, the next chapter can switch to a different character. This does not follow that pattern. We'll use Miles and Samantha, for instance. You have Miles going for about mid-chapter like that. It switches to Samantha. There's no break. There's no paragraph change. It just instantly changes. That takes so much to get used to. Now, once you hit mid-book, it does start to get interesting because you're already introduced to all these characters. You already have an insight to their lives. However, you get all these people who want to start running for his seat. You have a character named Simon, and I really dislike him. He's kind of an abusive father. He abuses his wife and children, physically, mentally, and emotionally. He's running just for the power. You have Colin, and he's the school principal, and he was very close to Barry Fairbrother. He's running because he wants to keep what Barry had going. He wants to continue that memory. Then you have Miles running, and he's only running because his parents want him to. They're kind of pushing him to do it, and his wife is severely against it, and she just kind of blatantly shows it. The final one that's running, I cannot say her name for the life of me. I think it's because they are more, and I don't know if it's true, if that's just my intake of this, but of like a Middle Eastern type of family, just because the way that they're described and the names. I cannot say her name, I cannot say her daughter's name. So I'm going to show you instead of insulting an entire culture. It's that P right there. Her daughter's name's even worse. I can't even begin to describe what that looks like. That S one. Like, she's running, and she was close to Barry as well, and she's kind of following the same stuff as Colin, as to keep his memory and his work alive. Those are the ones that are running. However, there is this website of the parish council, and someone hacks into it, and they log in as the ghost of Barry Fairbrother, and they begin to slander the runners. I say slander, although what they say is, in fact, true, because it is kind of funny who is slandering these people, because they all think it's someone else, and they never think it's the person that they least expect, which is kind of funny. The first one is Simon. I love how Simon is slandered because he works so hard to keep this one thing a secret, and he threatened his family with it, and then it comes out into the open. Then he loses his job for it because, well, I just dislike him, so I found it kind of funny. The next one is a completely different person who poses as the ghost of Barry Fairbrother, and Parminder, whatever her name is, she's the next one to get slandered. I actually felt bad for her with what was said, but it was still kind of had that amusing factor to it. The other one who gets slandered is Colin. His was kind of, although the first two, the people who slander their names, had anger towards them, and it was kind of like a vendetta. With Colin, however, it just seemed very, what they said was just, and don't get me wrong, the others were very vile and nasty, but with Collins, it was just because they exposed his fear and kind of like a disorder, and I thought that was cruel. And probably just because I didn't like the character who did it. You do know who does it, by the way. Now that means with the other three being slandered against, everyone begins to assume that Miles and his family they're the ones behind it. You have his father, Howard, and his mother, Shirley. And they're beginning to think, because Shirley's the one who kind of runs the website, that she's not doing anything to stop it, and so on and so forth, and she's just kind of letting it sit there. Then you start seeing more in depth with the characters and just things like that. The election happens, Miles wins, and there's this big party. Later on that night, someone finds out a secret about this family. Lo and behold, the ghost of Barry Fairbrother returns, and instead of slandering Miles, they do it against Howard, the husband, the father. To me, I loved that, because it wasn't just a jab at Howard, it was against Shirley, and I really disliked her. She was, and pardon my French, a bitch. At the end, however, it has really nothing to do with the election. Basically, what Barry Fairbrother was trying to keep alive was these things called the fields, and that was kind of the ghetto of Pegford. Now, there's this one character, Crystal Whedon, who lives in the fields, and she was very close to Barry Fairbrother. He really wanted to help her and her family out, and you have the characters of Colin and Parminder, who want to keep the fields and want to help them out, and Bellchapel, which is kind of a drug addiction clinic, and they want to keep that going to help them out. Simon doesn't really care. But then you have Miles and his parents, who are pushing for them to get rid of the field and Bellchapel. Now, I am not sure how politics really work over here, but I'm not sure you can actually take a part of your town or county, cut it off, and be like, go join the next one, which is kind of what Miles and his family wanted to do. The ending is very, very sad. It's a tragedy. It does pull at your hearts because you do grow connected to some of these characters. You do start to feel for them. But something happens, and all these people are connected to this one incident, but none of them did anything to stop it because although they didn't really think anything was happening, they pretty much could have stopped it in the same sense. However, after it all happens, they kind of start to think back about it and go, oh, yeah, I could have stopped that. I was there. I should have noticed. I should have seen. I should have done this. I should have done that. It is a very sad ending. However, it does kind of give like a glimmer of hope for the town. I'm not telling you what the ending is, but it is terribly, terribly sad. Now, that is pretty much the entire story for you. It's a very political book, so if you guys aren't into politics and things like that, this might not be the best book for you. Now, to kind of talk about what I did like about the books and what I didn't like about the book. What I didn't like about this book, and I've already said some of them, but the main one is Pegford. I hate that word. Now, it could be because the first few times it comes up in the book, I kind of sat there and I thought it said pig farts. Yes, pig farts. I'm gonna go to pig farts. It's on Mars, and I can ride on Rumbleroar's back, but only if I'm a good student. Go watch a Harry Potter musical if you have no idea what I'm talking about. As I said already, with the character changing, the point of views and all that, it was very confusing at first. Another thing is how long it took for the story to get interesting. It should not take to like mid-half book to become interesting. So we're gonna do what I did like about Casual Vacancy now. One thing I really, really did like about this book is how her writing style changed so dramatically from Harry Potter to this. This one deals with much more adult things. You have drugs, you have fighting, death, rape. For her to kind of switch into that mode makes her a profound writer. Her style is very well in this book. I will give it that. There was really no plot to it, I suppose. That's kind of what my main issue with this is. There really was no plot to it. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't. It was decent. I would have to give this book maybe a C. It takes too long to adjust to, no plot line, and it's just so slow at times. It is worth a read if you're into politics and things like that, or if you just, like me, want to see how her style had changed from Harry Potter to this. I would say rent it. Really just go rent it from the library, borrow it from someone if they have it. The next book I'm going to read for you guys is a teeny tiny one, so it should not take me long at all with this one. I give you Susan Hill's The Man in the Picture, a ghost story. I'm going to read to you guys the back panel, and it should not take me long to read this at all. A mysterious depiction of masked revelers at the Venice Carnival hangs in the college rooms of Oliver's old professor at Cambridge. On this cold winter's night, as they sip whiskey by the fire, the pitcher's eerie secret is revealed by an aging dawn. The dark art of the Venetian scene, instead of imitating life, has the power to entrap it. To stare into the painting is to play dangerously with unseen demons, to become a victim of its macabre beauty. Keep tuned for this one. It should not take me long at all. Week tops. If it takes me longer than a week, something's happened to me then. Rent, it's a C. Keep tuned if this sounds interesting. And until then, my bookworms,